Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Enough to Keep Going. This is E2KG's 2017 Game of the Year, Game Experience Wrap-Up. So this is part two. We just finished up with part one, and hopefully you've had a chance to listen to that, view it. Part one, we talked about our hidden gems. We talked about some sleazy business practices. We stayed on topic for the most part. We talked about our family game nights. We talked about the game that we have had the most fun with this year as well. So in our second half of the show, we're going to be covering games that we think are going to be the game of the year in major gaming media outlets. We're going to talk about games that are the most widely known throughout pop culture. We're going to talk about our most disappointing game experiences. We're going to talk about games that we regret not playing or getting rid of too soon, and the game that we think will still be playing in 2017. So if you're joining us or you have had a chance to watch the first one, we did say that we might have a special guest coming on our second episode. And so as we head into 2018 on the E2KG network, we want to invite all of our E2KG family here, and so we have Dave along with us. Dave, you and Glassicles have been doing some podcasting on a number of different other geek-related topics here, but I want to give you a minute to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so me and Glassicles usually cover entertainment, and we're finishing up with The Gifted, and then we're going to be covering Punisher, and then after that, we're not quite sure what we're going to be covering. But I've been mostly PC gamer, but I just got a PS4 during Black Friday, so I thought I might as well drop in on the gaming side of the E2KG network.
Yeah, it takes a while to say sometimes, so even I have to practice it sometimes. So yes, on the E2KG network, we are glad to have you as part of the gaming brethren at this stage. So welcome to the PS4 family as well. You picked a good time to jump in. Lots of good games and cheap games here on the system as well. So the nice thing about the E2KG network is we cover all the systems, whether it's PC, whether it's PlayStation. We definitely talked a lot about Switch games in our first part one of our Game of the Year experiences. And we might even get to some Xbox games over the course of this one as well. So, gentlemen, we are all back here. Glassicles has just done a couple equipment checks, so he's not on mic and on camera yet. But Osiris Prime, you are back with us, so good to have you back, sir. You have not changed your Santa stocking hat yet?
Nope.
Excellent. And Swiss, you still do not have a fire in that fireplace. So,
well, I'm a gamer, not a woodsman.
that is a very fair point. And Glassicles, you are now back. So thank you, sir. Thank you for all the tech wizardry on the back end and making sure this back-to-back episode continues to roll along. So we are going to dive right into our first topic. This is we ended our last show talking about the game that we had the most fun with, but we know that there are other games out there that maybe are more important gaming experiences, more vital to evolving the medium, or just things that may have other praise from other gaming outlets. So this is our most likely to be Game of the Year in other media outlets. So we finished talking about our most fun game on a Nintendo game. So let's start this podcast on a Nintendo game as well. So Swiss, you have down Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. You're wearing the Zelda Link sweater, which is very appropriate. So why do you think that this is going to be other outlets' Game of the Year?
Well, I think Breath of the Wild is going to be other outlets' Game of the Year just because, well, first, it's obviously an excellent game. So they, I think in the past that Zelda games have been widely praised with each release. They're always very polished. Nintendo does a great job, but they revamped the formula greatly with Breath of the Wild, and that garners a lot of attention. So you have that combined with the fact that Zelda was a launch title and coincides with the rise of the Nintendo Switch. 2017 has been, we've seen the Switch really capture people's attention, and has been, you know, a grand slam for Nintendo, and Zelda's like caught up in that whirlwind. So I just think that all those factors will contribute to most media outlets just looking at it and saying, you know, for 2017, if you want to point to one game emblematic of 2017, it's going to be Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Okay. So, Dave, you are just joining us. You may not be wearing a Link sweater, but this was also your choice for this category, that you thought that other major gaming outlets would pick Breath of the Wild as the game of the year. What was your rationale there?
I mean, I just hear a lot of people talking about it. And I think as quality goes, and I think, don't quote me on this because I'm not a numbers guy, but I feel like it was a strong seller too.
Yes, that's true, right? Early, it sold more copies of the game than there were Switches sold. So
wait, they sold more copies?
It's
on the Wii U too, right?
No, just Switch versions. There were more Switch copies sold within the first 3 months of the sales than there were Switches sold.
Oh,
mainly
okay.
because of supply chain.
So then, obviously, those people probably got Switches down the road. Okay. Yeah, so that's just going off what I've heard. I think it's definitely the game that, I mean, just what you said, it's the game that got people to buy the Switch. And it's the most talked about among all my friends, even the ones that have the PlayStation. So that's my reasoning.
Okay. So I also chose Breath of the Wild as the game of the, what other outlets would choose as game of the year. And mainly, while I may think that I had more fun with Morio. Morio is like a puzzle box, and they've set up intricate little moon puzzles for you to try to figure out and solve. Where in Breath of the Wild, they've created just a playground for you to experiment in. Whether that's trying to chain together unlikely ways to defeat enemies, or putting balloons on top of a raft to fly across the world, and a number of ways just to be in that playground. So that's where I think, in terms of evolving the Zelda franchise, so I am somebody who has fallen asleep trying to start the last two big name Zelda games. In terms of Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, I have fallen asleep in the introduction stages because they are slow but I think Breath of the Wild, they took a serious look at some of the mechanisms in the game, and some of the ways that they've implemented that, and just really evolved it. And so that's where I think that it has the potential to win a lot of Game of the Year awards, and deservedly so. So, Augustocles, you did not choose Breath of the Wild, but you chose another big, involved, open world title with a huge expansion, and a game that also, I think, you can make a strong case for why it deserves to be recognized by other media outlets as the game of the year. You chose Guerrilla Games' Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah, and I've been, listening to the voice tracks of, lots of the gaming websites, podcasts, and whatnot, and Horizon Zero Dawn has remained right up there with Zelda in most cases in a lot of those podcasts. And it firmly sounded like it was going to come down to one of those two games for a lot of them. I wound up picking Horizon Zero Dawn, and quite honestly hoping that would be the result, because while I applaud Nintendo for the swerve that they did with Legend of Zelda, at the end of the day, I hate to use the term old, but I don't know what else. It's an old IP, whereas I feel like Horizon Zero Dawn was such a transformative game for Guerrilla Studios, being the guys who have historically done the Killzone series. Absolutely an out of this world change, and for them to have gone to Sony and pitched, hey, please let us do something different than Killzone, and for Horizon Zero Dawn to be the result, it's just amazing to me. And I felt the characters were a little, different than, I'll just call them different, and they appealed more to me than what I saw in Legend of Zelda. Legend of Zelda is a great mechanical game and a great adventure game in terms of the different things that you get to do. But as far as a character-driven narrative, I felt like that was stronger in Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think so. Here's the truth: I sold my copy of Breath of the Wild because I just was done with it. I know I wasn't going to come back to it, but I did pick up Horizon Zero Dawn over Black Friday because I know I wanted to come back to that game because it is the uniqueness of that IP. So I think there's a lot there. Prime, we've got two big open world games. Do you have a third contender here for major media outlet game of the year, or are you going to side on one side or the other here as your choice?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I picked Zelda, also Breath of the Wild, and just because I've never played. Excuse me, I don't have PS4, so I've never played Horizons. Although that was one of the games that if I do have a PS4, if I ever get one, I'm definitely gonna pick up and play through. Seemed like my type of game. It's set in the. I'm assuming it's set in the future. What it looks like. Robot dinosaurs. I mean, well, come on, that's all you need, really. But yeah, I picked Zelda, basically for the same reasons. Big open world. They did something different. A lot of those things that Gascles talk about. Hey, we're going to pitch something different for this game. You can kind of go into Zelda because obviously they did an open world, which has never been I guess kind of done, sort of done in a Zelda game, but it was always kind of in like an enclosed open world, and you kind of jumped into another enclosed open world. So this is just like total open world. Go wherever you want, do whatever you want. Obviously, you can get killed if you go into certain areas if you're not prepared, but it was just a fun game to go through, and I'm still having fun with it. I'll still pick it up every once in a while. I have so many games now that it's ridiculous on the Switch, so I have to cycle through the games every now and then. So it'll hit my rotation just like I guess Cleese does. So I'm going to start picking up his way he goes through his games. So, but yeah, that was my choice.
Great. So we got to move through our categories, gentlemen. And Dave, this is the way we've kind of laid this out. But we also want to provide some time at the end of each category for some feedback, some rebuttals, some additional thoughts that people might have. So, I agree with the nice thing about this is we can agree with everything that's been said, and that's okay, right? I think the fact that we have two games from March that we are still talking about as some of the best game experiences of the year and deservingly game of the year contenders is a strong statement about this year, or the creativity that came with it. So any final thoughts on this one, gentlemen? All right, so we are going to move off of major game of the year from other gaming media outlets into a game that is probably going to be, the most widely known by pop culture not references, but by the wider media, mass media. This is something that's going to be picked up in Entertainment Weekly, something that I'd say maybe hits the front page of Reddit on a regular basis, or something that is going to be known by a wider audience than just gamers. So, Dave, you start us off here. You are our guest on this show. So what is your game that you think is going to get the most coverage or be the most widely known by a wider audience?
I'm going to say it's Call of Duty World War II. That was a tough one for me. I just feel like there's a lot of people who already know about Call of Duty, but I feel like it's going to be known again because what Call of Duty World War II is going towards is like, I feel it's one of the most realistic looking games on a 4K out there, and it's like just the point where you can almost not tell the difference between real and unreal on a TV. And I think it's kind of one of those games that, like, at least when I was at my workplace, that was the one where people that weren't gamers, they at least could, they could say, oh, yeah, I know about Call of Duty.
All right, and I think there's been from signs of its sales, it's definitely off to a really strong start. I've been reading in some places in terms of how it's been outpacing Star Wars Battlefront and other games. So it's definitely been picked up by unlike last year's game, Infinite Warfare, which I really enjoyed. Certainly did not sell very well and was the lowest of a downward sales trajectory. So I think the fact that it has been being picked up is a good sign that it is going to be known to a wider audience. So another big seller every year in and out is Madden. And Swiss, that is your game of this category. How come?
Mostly just because, with Madden, I feel like anytime you watch the NFL on Sunday or basically any sports show, even on the radio, they use Madden as like a way to describe the game sometimes. When a guy does like a crazy juke or something and stiff arm, and they're like, wow, that's from Madden. It's entered almost like the sports lexicon. So from that perspective, and it's an annual release, comes out every August. People know it's coming. So that's kind of why I went to it. There's Call of Duty was another excellent choice and a contender for me. Mario would have been a contender for me. But I guess what tipped the hat for me towards Madden, which I don't think any of us here are thinking Madden's like a game of the year contender or anything like that. But what tipped it for me as far as is like the for the known by normals, I thought, okay, most people are going to know what Call of Duty is. Are they going to know the specific iteration and what makes this year's iteration unique? Most people are going to know who Mario is, but do they know specifically what makes Odyssey unique? They know what Madden is. It's football. And just the simplicity of it. So that's why I gave that the edge.
So what is known by, as you say, normals. So I'm going to take a different tact here, and I'm going to say the game that I think was. This goes back to some of our discussions in the last episode of how we interpret the categories. And so I thought about something that is most likely to be known by pop culture or in a wider audience. I'm going to say Star Wars Battlefront 2. And I'm going to say that at first it might have been because of just the sheer IP behemoth that it is. But I am not proud, but I am glad to say that it is known because it got just railed for the sleazy business practice of its loot box and its progression system. So, Agasicles, I may not have spent time on this in our sleazy business practice topic, but I was finding a way to sneak in the crap that is the progression system of Star Wars Battlefront 2 and the
I hope
star
I got
cards.
honorable mention when you guys talked about that in the last podcast.
Yes. So no, we got there. We covered it, but not nearly as much as we could have railed against it. So this is why I chose Star Wars Battlefront 2 as my game known to a wider audience, because of just the sheer amount of bad press that it got, and my hope that even in the light of the hype around Star Wars, that its poor sales will continue because of the game design decisions that it's made. So, Agasicles, that is not your choice. You took a different tact here. So I'm curious on your approach, but you chose Pokemon Go, which I think is another excellent choice for this category as something known to a really wide audience. So how come?
Didn't that come out last year, though, just saying?
Oh, but we could say there's been updates. Right now we're heading into Generation 3. They've had raids. There's stuff that's been going on this year. So
yeah, and I mean that was I guess that was one of our criteria, right? We allowed for previously released games because look, at the end of the day, we're not a paid media company, right? Everything that we discuss on the show and everything that we do, we pay for out of our own pocket. So and I guess one of my arguments would be, despite coming out last year, Pokemon Go to me still supersedes a lot of games that have been released in 2017 as far as moms and dads awareness of the games. And that's kind of the criteria discussion for me is this is the one category I've maybe struggled with the most. And it was what is constituted by this question, right? Of who's going to know about the game and normals, and kind of the same way Swiss mentioned, one of my things was I wanted to. There were certain games I wanted to pick, and I realized I was picking them based on franchise awareness. And I was like, well, no, I think it should be diced a little finer than that. And like Swiss said, right? But do they know that release for that year? And I started leaning towards, when Grand Theft Auto 4 was out. That was the hot coffee version, and like Mom's
It's 3.
Was it 3?
It was San Andreas. San Andreas was hot coffee. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So like parents knew about that version of Grand Theft Auto, right, because of that scandal. And so I was trying to think of what game I thought, was most appropriate to select from that viewpoint, and I wound up picking Pokemon Go.
All right. So, Prime, you have Pokemon Go on your phone, as you just showed us. Is that your game that you chose for this category? What did you choose for this category?
It is not, no. And all of these are actually really good choices. I never even thought about really Call of Duty, and it came back with this, to World War II. Madden, obviously, Swiss said it's coming, every year. Pokemon Go, didn't even think about that. But my choice, maybe it was a little obvious, but I did pick Mario Odyssey and Mario, just because. Yeah, they might, everybody will be mentioning it because it's Mario. But that's the thing, though. Everyone's going to mention it because it is Mario. You'll have moms. Moms know who it is. Dads, obviously, if they've grown up being gamers. But even if they're not, they know who Mario is. And even if they might not know, okay, this is Mario Odyssey, it's still going to, they're still going to throw those commercials up there, say like on the Ellen show, they can always throw it on there, or, The View and stuff like that. It's something, family oriented, I'll say wholesome. It's kind of weird.
I'd say it's part of your balanced breakfast, even, right?
Right,
if you can find Mario Odyssey in your cereal aisle, I think that also is a good reason why this could be a strong contender and a good choice for this category.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my reasoning behind it. Just because it's I will go broad. It's more likely they're not going to know it's Odyssey, but Mario is obviously out there and as big as, I'll say it, big as Mickey Mouse, Disney, I'll say it. But yeah, he's just well known. So it's but like I said, all these are good choices, great choices.
He's cooler than Mickey Mouse too.
That's right.
Off topic, I can see Disney buying Nintendo one day. Totally.
They're buying up everybody right now.
So gentlemen, any final thoughts on any of these choices for this category?
Yeah, just one comment on what Prime mentioned about like the appropriateness of the pick. Even within the criteria that Swiss and I lean towards, I would still say that Odyssey is an appropriate pick, because I think they may not know that it's Mario Odyssey. They may just think, well, it's the new Mario. But I think they will equate it with it's the Switch version of Mario, right? Because we'll be lucky to see another Mario title in a single hardware generation with Nintendo. If we do, it'll probably be near the end. So I think for a long period of time, this will be the Switch's version of Mario, and I think people will identify with that.
That's great. Good picks, guys. Good picks. So our next category, we're moving to things that may be well known, but now we're moving on to our most disappointing game experience. So we've been hyping it up. We've been talking about positive game experiences. We've been talking about the things we had the most fun with. And now we're going to talk about our most disappointed. So Swiss and Aglasicles, you guys have both chosen the same game for this. And, it is a series that I am incredibly disappointed to see it kind of fizzle out, because I have spent 180 hours in the first 3 Mass Effect games. So gentlemen, why did you choose Mass Effect Andromeda as the most disappointing game experience?
Mostly because of how it just came out of the gate. Like, so as you said, had a great lineage, Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, beloved by gamers. Perhaps not the ending of 3, but that's another story. But so everybody was hyped for it, and then it comes out, and the story's mediocre, and it's glitchy, and there's bugs, and there's these weird things where like the character models are like all over themselves, and it just doesn't work right. So, and it was so bad that they disbanded the studio, and it was just absorbed into EA Motive. BioWare Montreal was. So I don't think something that's supposed to be a flagship franchise that kills off a whole development studio. It's disappointing. Star Wars Battlefront 2 was also disappointing, but if you were a pessimist, you knew this was coming.
Glassicles? How come?
Yeah, and I'll really admit this is sort of like the Oscars. This is a game that I did not actually play, but I think that's okay. I mean, I didn't play it because reviews were so disappointing and disparaging that I didn't feel willing to spend my $60 to experiment and find out if everybody else was wrong. So I played mostly Mass Effect 2. I went back and dabbled with 1, and I never got around to 3. It's a franchise that I want to get back and carve some time out to play, but I was hoping in the interim that I could jump on board with Andromeda, and that turned out not to be the case. And like Swiss said, right, this is a studio, and granted, this was a different site of this particular development company, so arguably a slightly different studio, but long legacy, right? This is the Baldur's Gate studio. This is the Mass Effect studio. This is the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic studio. Like, these are supposed to be the guys who know how to do RPGs, and Mass Effect Andromeda is a huge letdown. And it's a mirror of some things that have been going on in comics, specifically at Marvel, where there are products being released that are below the levels that we expect of paid professionals, and that's kind of what Andromeda was. And I referenced that back in the previous category where this was a pick. Right, this was unacceptable to be released from a quality perspective for a studio this big. You expect that from certain levels of studios, but not these guys. And just a quick metric I'll point out, that is 2 sci-fi franchises ruined by 1 publishing company in 2017. Pretty impressive track record.
Yeah, right. That's not a good sign for EA there, right? So I think that the point of BioWare Montreal is, I also do wonder, with Anthem coming out and the main BioWare team that was on the original trilogy focused on that, I wonder where those 2 teams diverged. What's up, in terms of that piece there. But Dave, you did not choose Mass Effect here. You chose another sci-fi game, though, one that we've talked about in the first half of the podcast in some positive ways, but also in some negative, some mixed feelings here. So you chose Destiny 2 as your most disappointing game experience. How so? Because Glassicles and I have both spent a lot of time in that game. What made it disappointing for you?
So I just started playing it, and I started reading people's reviews on it, and I read about the end game starts to become really lackluster, and that they added what's the word for it? I'm blanking here. Scaling at the end, where you start to get less loot based on your level or something like that. And then
yes, we did talk about that in the last show here a little bit, Dave. So we did talk about, the fact that they throttled that, but whether or not that's reasonable, but they also didn't necessarily communicate that. So is that what made it disappointing for you, or was it just the hype and the reality were not, they did not align?
Yeah, I just don't think that it doesn't have enough that I think it was hyped up for. I think that it starts to get boring and repetitive, and then a lot of people are turning back to Warframe with their new expansion, and Warframe is a better alternative, I think. So that's my spill.
Aha. So I will say that I thoroughly enjoyed Destiny 2 from what I played, but I also have been able to set it down, and it's been, even on PC, it's been kind of, I just pick up and play a little bit here and there. I've not sunk the amount of time into it that maybe you have, Glassicles. But I thought about Destiny 2 as my most disappointing game because of the story, right? I am a lore guy in Destiny. I want to know more about the darkness and the worlds, but that's not what we got in Destiny 2. But really, my biggest disappointment, if I'm going to talk about where my fanboy heart lies, it's in my bookshelves of Star Wars fan of fiction, not fan fiction. I've written my own, of course. No, I'm just kidding. But Battlefront 2, it was my disappointment. I knew that the multiplayer the PvP aspects of the trooper combat was not going to be my thing, but I had high hopes for the single player story, right? This is Walt Williams, who wrote Spec Ops: The Line, which I think is an incredibly underrated narrative in terms of video games and the way they play with expectations, and also Mitch Dyer from IGN, but I've been listening to him on other podcasts, and he's a huge Star Wars fan, and to take that potential. And as somebody who has read the Inferno Squadron book of those characters and squander them as quickly as they do, that's why it's the disappointment for me. So not because of terrible business practices and all the other things that, as you said, Swiss, are right. Those were telegraphed and we could see those coming. But I had held out hope that the narrative was something that could hook me. So Prime, you've got a lot of choices here of disappointing games. Do you have an echo for one of us, or do you have your own disappointing experience this year?
No, I actually got a game here that might surprise some of you, but it's actually Mario Rabbids on the Switch. Not because it wasn't fun. I did enjoy it when I'm playing it. I still play it. But man, this game is super hard. At least for me. I couldn't believe how hard this game was, and maybe it's just because it's the play style, just because I'm not used to it. But I mean, I barely got past the. I don't think it's the level 1 boss. I think he might be in like a mid boss, is like the piranha plant kind of thing. It took me like 3 or 4 tries just to get past that thing. So that's just my that. So that was my pick for Mario Rabbids. Just because I didn't expect the difficulty like that, and like I said, maybe it's just because of the gameplay style. I'm just not used to it. But I'm gonna keep going at it, and hopefully I'll get better and kind of figure out everything, because I know like each character has their own attributes, which I'm probably not paying attention as closely as I probably should be. So I gotta start doing that a little bit more and just kind of go in there and get my team ready before I go into a big battle.
Great. So gentlemen, any follow-up, any bad flashbacks that any of these other games brought up for you? Any final comments before we move on to the next category?
I will say, for Dave selecting Destiny 2 as the most disappointing game, Prime for Destiny 1 for Prime was the most disappointing game, and he still rants about it. So you're in good company.
Down with Destiny.
No. Okay. I'm going to go back and do a few more public events just to feel better about my Guardian here. So, gentlemen, we're going to move on to our second to last category here this evening, is the game most likely that we regret not playing, passing on, not spending enough time with, or trading in, right? That we have spent time with a lot of games over the course of this year, but we know we can't play everything. We are parents and employees and coworkers, just as much as we are gamers. And so what are some of those games that we passed on that we wish we hadn't? So I'm going to turn this over to you, Prime, because you have this year kind of dug into a lot of games, which meant that you probably passed on a few as well. So what's on your radar of something that you passed on or wish you hadn't passed on?
So yeah, my pick for this one is something I actually have, but this kind of goes into I haven't played all that much, is Fire Emblem Warriors. Excuse me. So this came out about a week? I think it was a week before Mario Odyssey, which was bad timing, and once again bad timing on these companies releasing games. But yeah, this is if you don't know, this is Musou style game, kind of like Dynasty Warriors. You got your player and just kind of a battlefield, and there's like just tons of guys on screen. You can just kind of rip through them. So I've always liked the Dynasty Warrior games, enjoyed them, and I enjoyed this game. And this kind of has a little bit more strategy. You can kind of send off your players onto other parts of the screen or the map, excuse me, and do things like that. And there's other obviously Fire Emblem has the the sword, axe, and spear. Is that, if I'm right?
Yep, sword, lance, spear. Sword, lance, and axe. Yep.
Yeah, so one beats another one. One's more powerful against the other. So, but I just once Mario Odyssey came out, I started playing that, and I've been playing that, and then you had Skyrim and Rocket League, and I've been playing those. So it just kind of fell through the wayside right now. So that's my choice right now.
So Prime, is this the mobile game?
No, this is the Switch game. This is
Okay.
that's Heroes, I believe, on
Okay.
the mobile side. Yeah, that one
Yep.
too, though. I haven't played. I started playing that when it first came out, and that just kind of fell through.
So, Glassicles, you have another game that came out actually before Heroes did. It came out at the beginning of 2017. It's a game that I have been interested in and also a little afraid of as well, but it just had a gold edition released with the new DLC. So your game that you regret not playing is Resident Evil 7.
Yeah, so this was a late February release. I kind of conjoined it with coming out in the same window as Horizon Zero Dawn, which came out 2 to 3 weeks later, I think, in mid-March in the run-up to spring break. It was actually in heavy Game of the Year contention, I would say, through a large part of the year, and then kind of fell out because I don't think a lot of people revisited it. It's not a game that has a ton of replay value, although they have released DLC that has Chris Redfield, I think, in it. So my disappointment in not having played enough of this game is it was kind of a series of calamitous events. So I had it installed on a gaming laptop that eventually died this year, and I didn't think that the game looked that well, and that gaming laptop should have kept up with it. It turns out it just looked horrible. I later installed it this fall on a desktop. It looks beautiful and amazing. That game is bonkers. It is way off the rails, completely insane. It is like an episode of The Walking Dead turned up to 11. And I progressed it further than I had at any point when it was installed on the laptop. So I'm beyond that point in the story. And like I said, it is already gone like completely zonkers in like the first 3 hours. It's definitely something I need to get back to. And I regret the time that I lost on it this year, probably about 6 months worth of time that if I had just installed it on the desktop, I would have appreciated the graphical fidelity more and gotten through more of it.
Yeah, no, I am really interested to hear more of that experience, and it's a game I picked up over Black Friday for $15, but I have not had a chance to play any of it because part of it, I'm also just scared. So, but another game that came out in that early window before March was came out at the end of February, right? Swiss. This is Nier Automata. I had a chance to play this back then. Really loved it. This is a platinum game, platinum in SquareSoft. So why did you put Nier on your list? Again, both Nier and Resident Evil still getting some talk in top 10 lists.
Well, as far as why I put it on my list is I looked at the category and most likely to regret trading in and then or not playing. So, and this kind of hits both for me. So I have had the game for a while and I haven't played it until as we were kind of starting to plan for this episode. I realized, you know what, I should. People are liking this game. I better at least try it out. And I was surprised at it was a lot of fun, and I was surprised at some of the creativity and just the design of the game. So the battle system is completely different than what I anticipated. It almost has like a Contra feel sometimes, and he changes the perspectives as you're going through the level. Like sometimes you're in like a classic, 3D JRPG type thing, and then other times he fixes the camera and it's almost like a 2D tribute to the past. It was just different and refreshing, and so I'm kicking myself that I haven't started earlier. That being said, this category is also most likely to regret trading in, and this has all the classic hallmarks of a game that I would play and then trade in. So it's a single-player RPG with a little bit quirky, stylized experience. So those tend to hold their value a little bit more than just something like a Final Fantasy that seems to drop in value. So it becomes tempting to trade in, and then I can easily convince myself, because it's a single-player game, hey, you're not going to play this. You've already beaten it. And then because it's such a unique experience, a year from that, I'm like, why did I trade that in? I want to try that out again. So Valkyria Chronicles is another one that that fits all those check boxes. So that JRPG kind of stylized game, and it's made some top 10 lists, so it's definitely worthy of people's attention.
All right. So, Dave, you and I have the same game on here. So mine is one that I played earlier in the year. It is one that we've talked about previously on this podcast and this episode even. And it's also one that I purchased before Black Friday and traded it back in because I could make a little bit more money, and have since regretted it as I've had a chance to dig back in to it through renting it. And I have just got sucked into the world over this past weekend. I kind of dove back in to see if it stayed here in this category of a regret, or if I moved it up to a higher category, and that is Guerrilla Games' Horizon Zero Dawn. I had a chance to sink a few more hours in over this weekend, and it pulled me back in, right? I played it in the spring and got through the initial kind of introduction tutorial place through the trials, and kind of got out into the big openness, and then Zelda came out, and I let it sit, and I never came back to it. And so I knew I wanted to come back to it, and I know that I will, because even just in the past 3 hours that I put in over the weekend, it's sucked me back in a way that you're right. You're right, Aglasicles. It really does tell a strong narrative. The characters that it creates, the diversity in that world is just amazing, and it's a huge boon to Guerrilla Games, as you talked about, the fact that it is a new IP, that they moved in a new direction, and so it's a great game that is an experience that if others have slept on it like I did, it's a great time to come back and pick it up, because now the complete edition is available with the frozen wildlands, or whatever it's called, the northern aspect of it. So Dave, that may not be your story, but you also put this game on your list as a game that you regret not playing. What was your rationale here for including Horizon Zero Dawn?
So I heard that it was like rated by some people to be Sony's big game of the year, and I just had a whole bunch of single player games, and I wasn't about to put another single player game on my plate. And I was also hesitant because there was no demo that I could find to try it out. So I passed on it. I'm trying to find more multiplayer games to mix up my single players that I've been getting and plan to get. But I wish that I could at least try it. And I regret not being able to have that opportunity, or passing on any opportunities to try it.
Great. So any final thoughts on this category, gentlemen? Any rebuttals, any follow-ups, anything else that struck your fancy as missed opportunities this year? All right. So we're going to head into our final category of not only tonight, but of 2017. So this is the game that we are most likely to be playing in 2018. Right after all these different gaming experiences that we've been talking about on the E2KG network, whether it's our own personal backlogs or new games that we've been picking up, new systems, that after all these experiences, we know that gaming doesn't stop as the calendar year does. And some games require that long-term investment, or as we've talked about, companies want that continuous engagement through whether it's sleazy practices or just beautiful worlds that they've created. So, and some games like Mario Odyssey are just fun enough that we want to keep coming back to them again and again. So, as our final category, this is the game that each of us are happy to say that we are most likely, and probably most likely be enjoying and still playing in 2018. So Dave, I'm going to start off with you, because you are a new PlayStation 4 owner, and so you probably have a huge list. As you were just saying, you didn't get a chance on Horizon Zero Dawn. So what is a game that you are most likely to be playing as the calendar ticks over to January of 2018?
Well, it's probably going to be Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. It's so difficult that it's going to take me a while to beat it. At least Crash 1 is like hard, and so just getting through Crash 1, I'm like, maybe Crash 2 and 3 remasters will go a lot faster. But I feel like even once I beat it, it's just one of those games that nostalgia kicks in because I have really fond memories playing it when I was like 13. And so playing it again as a 27-year-old is just really great. And I wanted to buy it too to support it, to say to the developers, please make a brand new Crash game. Give us more of this. And it's just a really happy, fun feeling, and it takes a while to beat. And so I can just see myself going back to it.
All right, so we're going to keep rolling on PlayStation exclusives here. And Swiss, you have another big, meaty JRPG as your potential game that you're still going to be playing in 2018.
Yeah, I selected Persona 5 for my game to still be playing. And mostly my criterion was it has to be good, which makes me want to play it. And it's long, so I figured I'd be playing it through most. It would be Persona 5. I did like Prime did in the first for part 1 of the podcast, cheat a little bit. I added a second game, which I view for more as the public at large. I have no interest in this particular game, but for the game, most in 2018, I put Grand Theft Auto 5 because for some reason it's still in the top 10 like all the time in sales, even though it's been out for 4 years. So however long it's been out. So I think we'll still keep seeing that. But for me personally, Persona 5, nice, meaty, long game.
All right. So for me, my game that I think I'll still be playing in 2018 is a game that I've already sunk 24 hours into. It's a game that I raved about on this podcast back in after the October release apocalypse that happened, and that is Assassin's Creed Origin. I am still just in love with this world. I have, there are some daily things to come back to. There is so much to explore, and just to wander around and be present in ancient Egypt, right? I've been able to climb up to pyramids. I've snuck through canals and plundered tombs. But at the same time, there is this narrative here that is going on of Bayek, of his, he is Egyptian, and this is at a time when Egypt is basically kind of, there's a puppet government, but it's overrun and occupied by Greece. And so there is this nice kind of political aspect here as well, and very empowering in terms of Bayek as a strong character, and the fact that it scratches that destiny itch for me of loot, of getting some golds and purples, and grinding up resources and crafting. There's so much here for me to do that actually this is the first game since my game of the year from 2015, Rise of the Tomb Raider, that I've actually purchased the season pass for. So I know that this is a game that I'll be coming back to again and again. And now on a PS4 Pro, it just looks so pretty as well. So that is my game. But Zeus, you have another game that I'm sure I'm going to be spending a lot of time in 2018 on, and that is Destiny 2. So why did you choose Destiny 2 as your game that you're going to be playing in 2018?
Kind of because it's the same, basic foundation as the game that I played a lot in 2016 and 17, despite the fact that it came out in 2014, and that was the OG Destiny. It continues to be, from a purist perspective, I would say, the best physics model in a first-person shooter, as far as I'm concerned. It is mechanically enjoyable to play consistently and continuously and all the time. When you ramp specific challenges and add in the loot and the character progression in it, it strips away a lot of the BS, right? I mean, it's very pure in its approach, and I enjoy it. And it continues to have this weird community effect where you drop into a game and meet a total stranger that, despite the fact that nobody's in chat, which still bugs me, everyone like collaboratively agrees on like the thing that they're going to. People know that if you meet somebody in a game, particularly if they're lower level, and they start following you, that's the signal that you're going to proceed to work together for like the next hour. And more often than not, that person will just stick with you. Like sometimes they'll come in and just help you beat a particular challenge. But I've dropped in out of nowhere and not mechanically brought them into my specific fire team, but like proceeded to play with a person for an hour just because I happened to run into them on a planet in the middle of the same firefight. And that's a pretty neat effect. And now I'm getting into playing the other character classes. For 3 years, I did nothing but play a Titan. But now I've created a hunter and a warlock, both in OG Destiny and in Destiny 2. And I expect that I'll continue to spend a chunk of dedicated game time on those in 2018.
Excellent. I'm curious to hear your impressions as you start playing through those other classes. So as somebody who has played all three but tended to main as a Titan. So, but yes, there's nothing like that social experience of playing together. That's a wonderful piece, and the so satisfying pop and plume of smoke that comes from a good headshot, right? That is always nice in Destiny as well. So Prime, you are going to finish this year off for us here. What is your game that you are going to still be playing in 2018?
So it's a game that I've spent last few years, actually. Well, I guess at least a couple years playing. Open world-ish kind of a game. There's a dragon there. It's Rocket League. Tricks you there. There's a little dragon topper you can get on for your car. But yeah, I've been playing this game for the last couple of years. It's on the Switch now, so I'm like pretty much like solely off of Xbox now. I'm just playing on the Switch now that I have that and Skyrim and Minecraft, and obviously got the the first party games. But yeah, I always have tons of fun with Rocket League. There's you got the crossplay that you can play with the Xbox and the PC. Hopefully one day PS4. Hopefully Sony can will open up their network or whatever they need to do to get crossplay working on their side, or policies or whatever. I don't know if it's really a network thing, a technical thing, but yeah. But I can jump in here, play a game or two, jump out and play something else and then go back in. That's what I do a lot of times. I just jump back and forth between Rocket League and whatever game flavor of the week I'm playing for that week. So that's my choice, and it's probably I'll probably play it pretty much all year. So
all right, so gentlemen, before we wrap up tonight, any final thoughts on games that we still want to be playing or anticipate that we'll be playing in 2018?
Well, I'll say Skyrim too. I'll be playing that one come in the new year.
Yes, that doesn't surprise us at all there. I know, but good. Again, I think we've all given some choices here, whether they're just individual challenges like Crash, or deep and meaty games like Persona, or games that have a persistence and a leveling aspect like Assassin's Creed and Destiny, or just the social aspect like Destiny and Rocket League. There's a lot there for anybody to dive into and enjoy. Gentlemen, we have covered a ton of topics and games in my list here. We have made it through without too many hiccups, and that's been great. And I want to say thank you all for your time tonight, but also for the time together and the conversations together over the course of this past year as we've launched the E2KG network, and we went through some growing pains, and as we moved along and found our feet and our voice, and now have found a good home within the GWW, and there is lots for us to do as we look ahead to 2018. We are going to be returning to that same traditional schedule that we've had of Tuesdays and Thursdays, our Tuesday nights as either our topic show or our playlist show, and then Thursdays as E2KG in 30 with our newscast. Again, this is our last Enough to Keep Going podcast for 2017. We will be coming back in January. We are targeting January 9th as the day we will return. And I got to tell you, gentlemen, that through this discussion and all the conversations we've had around our Game of the Year and Game of the Year experiences here, we've come up with a whole lot of potential topics for January, a lot more than we have time to cover. So for those of you out there listening, that I know that there's going to be a lot of good discussions to still keep coming on the E2KG network and here on Enough to Keep Going. Gentlemen, any final thoughts for the year, for the night? I'm going to go around the horn, and any plugs that people have, any big plans, any announcements as well. So, Prime, anything that you want to let us know about?
Yeah, I just want to say once again, thank you to you guys, especially for tonight, because we're kind of going back and forth whether we were going to even do this podcast tonight or if I was going to be on. But I had some things going on this week. You're just busy with life, unfortunately. But we got things going, and we did another great podcast as usual. So thank you guys for tonight and for this whole year. And Dave, hopefully you can join us more next year and get on the podcast, get on the rotation, get going. And then just the final thing. RIP for the Toys to Life this year, because they're pretty much all gone now, except for the Amiibos. They're still kicking a little bit, but yep, that's it.
All right, Dave, as you got a nice shout out there as a new member, or at least a new member on the Enough to Keep Going podcast, but definitely part of the E2KG network. Any final thoughts for the year? Any plugs here?
Sorry that I missed the first podcast, but I will do a quick shout out to one of my favorite games. Game that I would call in sick for would be Digimon Cyber Sleuth 2, because Digimon just makes me happy, and I was definitely a 90s kid that clinged to it, and I cling to it more than Pokemon. And I don't know, it's looking like a really good year for PlayStation. With the second E3 that just happened at PlayStation Experience in Bernie in Southern California. So looking forward to all the good stuff coming out.
All right. Yeah, I'll be looking forward to having you on the show. And now that you're part of the PlayStation family, I'm sure you're going to have lots to talk about as well. So Swiss, moving on to both a PlayStation 4 owner, but also a Switch owner. Any final thoughts for the year? It's been great to have you join the network here as our fourth chair and become a real strong part of what we provide to our audience as well. So thank you.
Well, yeah, as the new guy, I'm just very thankful that you guys allowed me to participate this year, and it's been a lot of fun and quite enjoyable, and it's been great. So thank you. As a gamer, my thought is just it stinks becoming an adult because there's so much great stuff out there, and there's not enough time to play it. But I wish I had more time to devote to my hobby. But it's great that I can, what little time I have, the time that I have, I can share it with you guys and my experiences with you. So thank you, E2KG.
And I want to say publicly, as a shout out here, Agasicles, E2KG would not be possible without you. Thank you for all the back end work that you do, for the startup that you did in terms of getting E2KG going, for your hosting, for your editing, for the time in and time out, the work that you put in on the side, the negotiations and conversations with GWW. What we do on a weekly basis is not possible without what you do on a daily basis. So, sir, thank you for that. Agasicles.
Oh, shucks.
Any final thoughts?
You gonna make me blush. So yeah, I just kind of want to say the same thing to you guys. I appreciate your compliment to me, but the fact of the matter is, all my engineering and editing wouldn't matter a hill of beans if there weren't other people to show up and actually speak content for the show. So it's really that E2KG wouldn't exist without all of us, right? And as we've said, specifically, I mean, all of you guys I have known through different venues and walks of life for an extended period of time. Swiss and I working together first primarily, and then him joining the network, DBQ and Prime and I existing as an extension of the Casual Adult Gamers website, Prime and I doing the podcast back when it was just us, an Elemental Storm for a year, and Dave back to our days working together, creating new content on the GWW. So it's kind of amazing that we've all now aggregated back into this pool. So thanks so much to you guys for helping kind of firmly plant the flag of the E2KG network for the first year of our existence, on to season 2, which, as DB mentioned, kicks off in January. I guess really the only other thing I want to say is for viewers and listeners out there, whether you watch us on YouTube as an affiliate of the Geeks Worldwide Network, or whether or not you listen to us or download us from SoundCloud, or pick us up from either the GWW the Geeks Worldwide website, or from my personal blog, gearworks.com. Join us. We have cookies. It doesn't take. You don't have to have a particular skill set to be a podcaster and to participate in the conversation. And DB and Prime and I, when we talked about whether or not we take Band of Gamers and roll it over and create something that is the same but different, that was the conversation, right? We said it's not so much that we need to podcast, but it's that we need to have this deep level of conversation about our hobby and our passions, that, like, unfortunately, like, the people that we work with and even our friends, right, in our local lives, like, just don't get into it that deep. So joining our network is really about extending your discussion about geek content, nerd content that you're passionate about. And yes, we have gaming shows now and an entertainment crew, but we're into everything, right? Comics, games, movies, tech, and TV. So anybody who wants to have a discussion about those things, please join the network. We will spin up a show. It doesn't take more than 2 people to create a show. So we will spin up a show in your particular interest area, as long as one of the 4 of us, is interested in it and has the time to dedicate to it, or if we can find at least one other person. So that's it.
Yeah, I think that's a great pitch and plug. I know that there are people out there that probably are looking for a platform like we were, and E2KG can be that. I think you're absolutely right, Aglasicles, that this group was enough to keep me going and enough to keep us going in the conversation. And I sure hope that there are people out there that E2KG can be enough to keep them going and get them engaged as well. So, gentlemen, thank you again. Thank you for a great 2017. I look forward to our 2018. And I know that until next time, we will always be enough to keep each other going. Have a good night.